Well, g'day curd nerds. Today I'm making mustard and dark ale cheese. So mustard and dark ale cheese, the recipe I found on cheesemaking.com, and it was authored by Jim Wallace. So thanks Jim for publishing the recipe, and I did modify it a little bit, but that's okay, that's what I do. I scaled it down to 12 litres or 3 gallons of milk, and I made some minor adjustments to the recipe. Anyway, you're probably wondering what the cheese looks like. I have finished it. So there it is there, it's just finished air drying. I'm just about to vacuum pack it. So let me show you how I made mustard and dark ale cheese. So don't forget to sanitize all of your equipment. I do mine by boiling. The milk I'm using today is from Inglenook Dairy, and it is full cream or whole milk, and it's unhomogenized. It's a very good milk indeed. So I've laid all of my utensils out, got all of my equipment there. That has been sanitized, and I'm ready to go. The main ingredients though, special ingredients as you can see, are dark ale and mustard seeds. So the ingredients for this cheese is 12 litres or 3 gallons of whole cow's milk, 3/16 of a teaspoon of MA 4001 or Kazoo mesophilic culture, half a teaspoon or 2.5 millilitres of calcium chloride diluted in a quarter of a cup of non-chlorinated water, 5/8 of a teaspoon or 3 millilitres of single strength rennet, also diluted in non-chlorinated water, 750 millilitres or 25 fluid ounces of dark ale beer, 3 tablespoons of brown or black mustard seeds, 2 tablespoons of yellow mustard seeds, an 18% saturated brine solution, and some cheese wax or vacuum packing. So clip on your thermometer and give your milk a bit of a stir. And we're going to heat the milk up to 23 degrees Celsius or 74 Fahrenheit. There's actually 2 ripening periods for this cheese because we're using a complex starter culture. It has cultures or bacteria within it that like to be ripened at a lower temperature and like to be ripened at a higher temperature. So we're going to add the starter culture now. So I chose to use the MA 4001 or 4000 series by Choose It. So I'm putting in my 3/16 of a teaspoon. Sprinkle that over the surface of the milk. And then cover it and allow the cultures to rehydrate for 5 minutes. So 5 minutes later, take the lid off and stir in the culture. So just checking the temperature. It's gone up a little bit, but that's okay. So with the heat off, just the milk will retain its heat over that period. We're just going to cover that and we're going to ripen the milk for 40 minutes. Okay, so 40 minutes later, I'm just going to give it a quick stir because a lot of the cream has floated to the top, so just give that a quick stir there. Just checking the temperature, and yep, it's about 23.7. Now heat your milk up to 32 degrees Celsius or 90 Fahrenheit, and this allows the secondary starter cultures within that main culture to activate as well, or to start colonizing the milk, eating the lactose. So remove it from the heat if you've already got the heat on. choice there, Gav. And we're going to allow that to ripen for 30 minutes. So this is the second ripening period. So 30 minutes later, you can see there's a bit of fat sitting on the top, which is actually cultured cream. So we're going to just remove that in a sec. I don't really want it in the milk. But first of all, I decided to give it a quick stir because the cream that hadn't floated at the top, the solid cream, I needed to stir that back in again. The fatty cream's going to float to the top regardless. So the temperature's dropped a little bit, 31.3. So we're just going to make sure that we bring that back up to the target temperature. So I'm going to add the calcium chloride in now. Remember, this adds back some soluble calcium so that the rennet can do its work on forming the curds. So I'm just skimming the fat off there. So now we're going to add the rennet, and this will coagulate the milk. So stir that for no more than 1 minute. Now with this cheese I chose to use the flocculation method to determine when the curd cut was. I put a little lid on the top and give it a spin. Start your stopwatch as soon as you've added the rennet, and then spin it at 8 minutes and then every 30 seconds to test for a curd set. Now I found that mine stopped moving at about the 14-minute mark, or 14 minutes 7 seconds to be exact. So that's known as the flocculation point. Now there'll be a full video on this very soon if I haven't already released it. So I'm using a flocculation multiplier of 3.5, so we time the flocculation point, which is 14 minutes, by 3.5. which gives us 49 minutes, which is the total curd set time. Now, the curd is already set for 14 minutes, so we need to remove the 14 minutes away from the total time. So just remove your little lid. So as I said, total curd set time 49 minutes, so we've got 35 minutes left after we take away that 14 minutes. And that's how long it'll take the curd to set for this type of cheese. So cover that up. And after the time has elapsed, we're going to check it for a clean break. Don't cut the curd yet, Gav. Right, time for a check for a clean break. I'll use my trusty curd knife. And there we go, perfect. So that's just one final check, just make sure that the flocculation time was okay. So I cut the curds into 1.25 centimetre or half-inch cubes. I've just done the horizontals with my trusty stainless steel curd harp, and using my curd knife to do the vertical cuts there. So do it one way and then perpendicular, do it the other way. And you should have fairly even sized cubes of curd. So pop the lid back on, and we're going to allow the curds to heal for 5 minutes. This stops them from fracturing when you give them a stir. So you can see there's a bit of whey on top, which is good because that's natural. And we're going to gently stir the curds. If you see any big ones, just break them up with the side of the spoon. Very gently in the first stages of stirring the curds and whey. So we're going to stir that for a total of 15 minutes. Now, there's no heat on or anything like that. The curd temperature is about 33 degrees. Let's have a look. Oh, it's a little bit less, but that's okay for 15 minutes. It's not going to kill the cheese or anything like that. I did turn the heat on there a little bit just to bring it up by a couple of degrees, but remember to turn it off again. So after 15 minutes of stirring, you can see that the curd size has shrunk and there's a lot more whey expelled. So I'm just letting that settle now, and we're just going to cover that, let it to settle for 5 minutes so the curds settle down to the bottom. Which is very important, because what we're going to do is remove some of the whey now, or some of the food for the lactic bacteria, and this creates a milder sort of cheese, less acidic than, say, a cheddar. So this is more along the lines of, say, a Gouda. So I'm going to dip off 3.5 litres or 14 cups of whey, and if you don't believe me, you can count them. But yeah, so dip those off. It'll be just above the level of the curds, roughly. Make sure you don't get any curds in your whey, you don't want to waste it. So you can just see the top of the curds there. Now give them a bit of a stir to prevent any matting of the curds. So this just breaks them up, because I find that when I pour the hot water of 63 degrees Celsius or 145 Fahrenheit in to replace the whey that I just removed, the curds, if they haven't been stirred, they tend to match really tightly together and you have to break them up with your hands. So pour that in. Now I did actually have to add a little bit of cold water because the temperature is a little bit too high. So the temperature you're trying to get to is 39 degrees Celsius or 102 degrees Fahrenheit. Now I'm pretty close there, so that's after adding a little bit of extra cold water, so I'm not too worried about that. Now the heat is off, there's no heat on the stove. So we're going to stir for an additional 15 minutes. This is called washing the curd. So to check if the curds are done, grab a handful and gently squeeze. And if they hold their shape, that's fantastic. And then break them apart with the thumb. And yeah, they'll be good to go if they break apart. If not, stir a little bit longer because the curds aren't cooked properly. So pop the lid back on again. And we're going to let them sink down to the bottom for 5 minutes. This just helps when we drain the curds. So with your sanitised colander, just put your cheesecloth over the top of that. And remove your pot from the stove and transfer the curds into a cheesecloth lined colander as we prepared earlier. Okay, so we're going to drain for 30 minutes, and during that time break up the curds into small pieces every 5 minutes. Now this helps assist with draining these curds as well, heaps. So just breaking them up into smaller pieces. Just a quick wash of the hands. So after you've done that every 5 minutes, just before you finish, just break them up one last time. And then transfer the curds from the cheesecloth into the pot. And just give the cheesecloth a good shake and most of the curds will come off, because you want to use the cheesecloth again later. So I'm just breaking up any big chunks there. Now I've got a bit of water in the bottom of the pot just to keep the curds just slightly warm. Not too warm, it's tepid water from the tap. So we're using the Coopers Brewery Dark Ale, and we're going to add the room temperature beer, so the beer can't be cold, it has to be room temperature, to the curds, and they should be just covered. The reason we're using room temperature beer is because the warm curds will more than likely absorb the cool beer, so it'll transfer into the curds. Not a lot, but enough to give you some distinct lines of the curd. So we're going to allow that to soak for 45 minutes and then stir every 5 minutes during that 45 minutes, just to break up the curd mass. So just gently break it up, just give it a bit of a stir with your hand, and then pop the lid back on. Do that every 5 minutes. There we go. So once the time has elapsed for soaking the curds, just break it up the final time. And we're going to drain the curds and then return them to the pot. They drain very freely. Pop them back in there and keep the cheesecloth. Look at those mustard seeds, aren't they a most vibrant colour? They're lovely. So I've got 3 tablespoons of the black mustard seeds, and I've got 2 tablespoons of the yellow mustard seeds, just for a little bit of contrast. That'll mix very well with the ale, I think. So add the mustard seeds to the curds and mix them well, so they're thoroughly distributed through the curds. Don't want any big pockets of mustard seeds. Now it smells very beery at this stage, or very ale-y, I suppose. So just line your cheese basket with the cheesecloth. If there's any bits on it, just shake them off. Just make sure that there's no cloth really clumping there. So transfer the curds in and the mustard seeds and the beer into the basket. So just pull the cheesecloth down a little bit so there's no wrinkles, and then push the curds down with your fist, just so there's no air pockets within the curd. This helps prevent any mechanical holes that may be caused by any air pockets in the curds there. Okay, so fold over the large side of the cheesecloth and then top it with the follower. And then we're going to press the cheese at 12.25 kilograms or 12 kilograms or 25 pounds of pressure for 30 minutes. Now with my press, that's the spring half closed. Now because we broke up the curds during the resting period, you won't see any fat come out. It will just be beer, basically. So remove the cheese from the basket and then gently turn it over, and then redress the cheese with the cheesecloth and pop it back in the basket, and fold the large side over, put the follower on top and press it again. This time we're going to apply 22.5 kilograms or 50 pounds of pressure for 1 hour. And this should sufficiently form the rind of the cheese, make it easier to handle as well. So remove the cheese from the basket. And turn the cheese over and redress it again. Pop it back in the basket. fold the cloth over, put the follower on top, and press it down to 22.5 kilograms or 50 pounds of pressure for 2 hours this time. So 2 hours later, remove the cheese from the basket again. Then take it out. The rind should have formed very well by now. So turn it over. Let's have a close-up of what it looks like. There we go. Very nice indeed. Nice even distribution of the mustard seeds. You can also see that there's a little bit of mottling around the curd pieces from the ale. Very nice. So pop it back into the basket for its final pressing. Fold the cheesecloth over, and we're going to apply 22.5 kilograms or 50 pounds of pressure for 8 hours or overnight. Okay, so for me it was the next day. So remove the cheese from the basket. Oh, it's very tight too. Very well formed rind. So place it in the brine solution for 9 hours, turning at the 4.5 hour mark. This should sufficiently salt the cheese. So we're going to remove it from the brine and place it on a mat. I've got some thick paper towel there. So pop it out of the brine. Let it drain a little bit. And then we're going to pat the cheese dry with some paper towel. This just helps speed up the air drying. Removes any moisture from the surface of the cheese. So place it on a drying mat. A little bit of a clean up there. Stops it looking messy. And there it is in all its glory after the brining. Lovely looking cheese. Okay, so we're going to air dry at room temperature, which is about 21 Celsius or 70 Fahrenheit, until it's touch dry. Mine took about 2 days, so turn that twice a day. So the final air weight was 1.233 kilograms or 2.72 pounds of weight. So I chose to vacuum pack the cheese. You can wax it if you like, no big deal. Make sure it's got 2 to 3 coats of wax so you don't get any mold in your cheese. Now I double seal each bag now to make sure that they don't leak any air. So just write on the bag or your wax on what date it should be opened. So ripen at 13 degrees Celsius or 55 Fahrenheit for 6 to 8 weeks. So an amazing little cheese, quite easy to make. Had one washing, not much of an issue really. Bit of an intermediate cheese, I suppose. Nothing too hard about it. Probably wouldn't dive in if I was a beginner and try it, but look, I've seen beginners make camembert, so it's no big deal. This cheese will mature for 6 to 8 weeks. So I'm going to go for the 2 months or the 8 weeks. But it smells absolutely fantastic. You can smell a hint of the mustard and you can definitely smell the dark ale. But I think the cheese flavour will obviously come through as well, seeing I used the MA 4000 series by Choose It, that brand of starter culture. So that'll give a really good all-round flavour. A little bit milder than normal because of the washed curd. Anyway, we'll do a taste test on this one soon, in the next 2 months or so. So if you want to see that taste test, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and hit the little bell to be notified of when each and every cheese making video comes out. Also, if you like the content in this video, please feel free to hit the little like button. Thanks for watching, Curd Nerds. If you want to buy the kit, I suggest probably the hard cheese kit. I'll put a link in the description below. Well, thank you for watching, Curd Nerds, and I will see you next time.